One Step Ahead by Lundquist and Beslick.
Welcome to One Step Ahead Radio, another session, another week. And as always, James is here with me in the studio. And James, if I understand correctly, we have a special guest today participating in One Step Ahead Radio.
We do indeed, yes. Hello, Sasha. Good to be back again. As you say, another week, another session. And we're happy to continue the guests that we continue starting to have more regularly on the podcast. So today we have Caterina Crociata, who works at the Italian Stock Exchange, to talk to us more about the Italian, the European scenario in terms of ESG investing and investors and their expectations and how companies are facing that, adapting that. We're going to cover some very interesting topics, really, about considering the sort of backdrop that people generally think it's sort of ESG is in a funk and in a crisis. But actually, what we're going to discover is actually things are evolving, the conversations are carrying on, they're turning to different sectors, different topics, different issues, and becoming more mature through this process. So I think that's going to be interesting to hear from Caterina that background. So welcome, Caterina. Thank you for joining One Step Ahead.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Sasha. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for inviting me. Very brief introduction of myself. I'm Caterina, and I work as a listing senior account manager at the Italian Stock Exchange, which is part of the Euronext Group since 2021. And I joined Borsa Italiana in 2018 after investment banking experience at Lazard. And today I work mainly on origination and account management with large issuers. And alongside that, I'm also involved in sustainable finance initiatives. For example, over the past few years, I've been closely engaged with the Italian Sustainability Week, which is our flagship event on these topics, which actually started back in 2015 as a one-day event and then has grown into a full week, and since 2023 is a Euronext-wide initiative. And we also launched a sustainable network with the goal of creating an integrated ecosystem for sustainable finance in Italy, connecting companies, investors, and market participants, and also been collaborating with our colleagues in the Euronext Indices team on the MIB ESG Index, which is the ESG blue chip index for Italy, supporting the development and methodology updates through a continuous dialogue with the issuers. So briefly introduction.
Lots of things. That's great.
Yeah.
It's obviously that's grown enormously in the last few years, and we'll unpack some of those things that you mentioned there, some of those initiatives and how things have been going in the last in the last period. But just to start, I mean, I wanted to just get, you've got a very interesting perspective from where you sit within the Italian Stock Exchange, and obviously your personal background, as you mentioned, within finance and sustainable finance. How do you see the whole sustainability and ESG investing scenario evolving in Italy? There's all this talk of the market walking back, of companies being less interested in this topic, or feeling that investors are turning their attention to other issues. Have you picked up on this? Do you feel that that's the way things are going, or is there something else going on under the surface?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yes, I would say that in Italy, probably also in Europe, we are seeing ESG and sustainability communication evolving significantly. So moving from a rather compliance-driven approach, focus on reporting and disclosure, to a more strategic, business-oriented one. Also, when we have the opportunity to speak with investors, they say that they are really interested in very few material KPIs, and more interested in how sustainability is embedded in companies' strategy. And this has been clearly visible during our Sustainability Week, where companies and investors are increasingly discussing sustainability as a driver of competitiveness and not just as a regulatory requirement. And so what we see is that sustainability is becoming really part of how companies communicate their value proposition, whether through resilient supply chains or energy transition investments. So more how this create tangible material impacts than just why sustainability matters.
That's absolutely, I mean, that's really interesting because that's exactly the kind of thinking and ideas that we've been discussing over the course of the year with Sasha and with various guests, and seeing this shift and this towards a more pragmatic, commercial, competitive edge to sustainable investing. Really kind of needing to get that message to companies, I think. I mean, obviously you deal with the major listed large companies, but I think it needs to spread down throughout all of, have a sort of a broader understanding that, reporting and compliance in the year where we're, swamped with CSRD and new, and not that, just that a lot of companies have that. That's one of many requirements they have. But in the end, what you're pointing to is the importance of the business model, the strategy, and also I like what you said about focusing on fewer KPIs, fewer topics, really kind of trying to focus on what really makes a difference to the investment story. We sometimes talk about sustainability investment stories being need to make, but it's sustainability's role in forwarding that investment story as well. So that's we're very pleased to hear that coming from you as well. But specifically on the Sustainability Week, which you had a short time ago, how exactly did it change this year? I mean, what new, how have you been catering to that change and that shift in the market? What have you been pushing and proposing, or have you changed kind of the setup of the issues and the companies that were involved?
Yeah, just recall, of course, is our flagship event on these topics an entire week, and this 2025 edition has been particularly meaningful as we celebrated both the 10th edition at Borsa Italiana and the third under the Euronext Group umbrella.
You get happy birthday, Miss Crociata.
Thank you. Yes, and but yeah, we definitely have some new features. One thing that stands out for sure is the breadth of participation. It's no longer just energy or utilities companies as in the very first editions, but a much wider range of sectors, including consumer-facing and family-owned businesses. And also we, of course, remain a platform for dialogue and collective engagement initiatives. For example, this year we had more than 1,000 meetings involving over 200 investors and 61 companies. Also, a few private companies that are issuers of ESG bonds.
All right. Okay. Good. Yeah.
But of course, at the same time, there is awareness of the current regulatory, geopolitical, and macroeconomic environment, which has naturally added some caution. But companies and investors are really focusing more on how these initiatives fit into their long-term perspective. So really as a strategic lever for competitiveness, innovation, and resilience, which at the end was the core message of the week.
That's fantastic, and it's great that there was so much meeting engagement in the real sense of the term. It's not just people in a room pitching and proposing to sort of to not many people. Like having so much engagement and involvement and meeting between companies and investors is great that there's that platform, because very often companies have that those meetings with investors directly, and they don't really have that ESG focus, and so they sort of come back to, I mean, in my experience, often they say, well, investors never ask us about sustainability or ESG. And here there's really this very important meeting place where that expectation, that demand can come out. I wanted to just focus on one thing you mentioned there, which was the question of the family-owned businesses.
Yeah.
I was interested in following up on that because obviously it's a particular characteristic of Italian business, Italian finance. There's a lot of companies that are still owned and controlled by families, sometimes for generations, but listed on the stock market. And in some other European countries, that's a particular feature compared to the more Anglo-Saxon model. How did you bring that up, and how are you seeing their role coming, or how they're approaching sustainability in general? Sort of, what was your picture coming away from that?
Yeah, as mentioned, of course, family businesses are play a central role in the Italian industrial ecosystem. So we decided to involve them in a panel during the Sustainability Week. For example, we had Ferragamo and Technogym representatives, and sustainability is increasingly a strategic asset for them. That of course tend to have a long-term perspective that naturally aligns with ESG principles, and focusing on sustainability helps them to preserve their legacy, the proximity to their communities, and ensure continuity across generations. And also another key aspect is the ability of each generation to adapt the business, products, and practices. And this is what we heard from these companies, to, of course, to all the current challenges. For example, the new generation more focus on products that are more aligned to these dimensions, and this requires not only an attention to environmental and social impact, but also an efficient governance for these companies. So a structured decision-making process, succession planning.
Yeah, that's vital for outside investors, because obviously they see that as a risk in terms of family-owned businesses, that, you know, it's going to be run in the interests of the family, or there's going to be decisions made that won't be maybe transparent or fair to minority investors, which is a huge issue. So yeah, it's interesting. That's part of the kind of the overall governance pillar that needs to be addressed. But I like, you know, this idea that, you know, it's not just also the big traditional large cap companies. It's also sort of starting to pervade the sort of mid cap companies, of which there are so many in Italy, and they have so much exposure even internationally. So it's kind of interesting to see that this evolution is also spreading to these kind of companies, and also supply chains. Very often, Italian sustainability movement and action to really relies on these supply chains working together and collaborating. And also, I know you have some initiatives in terms of that, of looking to virtuous examples of companies that is sort of driving sustainability through the supply chain. That's another issue that seems to be coming out, right?
Yeah. Also, another crucial dimension we focus on this year was indeed the importance of supply chains, and in this case, we've involved companies like Fincantieri and team that actively engaging suppliers. For example, Fincantieri has a very nice program called Partnership. So they make this joke on ship.
Yes, of course. Fincantieri, for those who don't know, is each naval construction company based in northeastern Italy. So partnership, yes, it's good.
Yeah, and of course, the crucial dimension in this case is that on the one side, large companies can set standards, align goals, and support their network of SMEs. On the other side, SMEs can gain competitiveness, digitalization, access to new opportunities. So this creates shared value, and it's very important.
Okay, just a final point, because I know that you at Euronext, you have a sort of a wider research and study looking at the overall evolution of sustainability practices in companies, because you have lots of listed companies across the different countries and markets in Europe. What are you seeing in terms of what companies are talking about and how they're pitching themselves, if I can use that term, how they're presenting themselves to the market from a sustainability point of view?
Yes, of course. If we look across the whole Euronext markets, what we see is a very clear evolution in corporate sustainability. And you mentioned our latest ESG trend report. It's a report that we published, starting from the ESG indicators we collect from all listed companies, over 1,500 companies on our markets. And this report shows real progress across all environmental, social, and governance dimensions. For example, issuers have reduced their average scope 1 and 2 emissions by 10% in 3 years. For example, large caps have become more energy efficient, lowering their energy intensity by 7%.
Right. Okay.
For example, on the social and governance front, we are seeing also women now over 35% in board positions, or a growing adoption of science-based climate targets, both in the short term and a commitment to net zero strategies. So I would say we observe a clear transition, a data-driven transition from commitment to implementation.
That's great. I mean, just wrapping up on the sort of key things that have been emerging from our conversation. Sustainability is alive and kicking, if you want, on the Italian Stock Exchange and on Euronext more broadly. Not just alive and kicking in terms of continuing to sort of to champion the slogan or the high-level message, but it's really being driven into businesses, into discussions with investors, into the way companies are run and governed. And also, I love this conversation about family-owned business, mid-sized companies, value chains, really starting to see that flow down because of that sort of visibility around the importance of sustainability for long-term competitiveness, for value creation, resilience. A lot of these keywords that you've been mentioning, I really thought that's a really good and positive, optimistic message and setting as we close 2025, and sort of it's kind of a retrospective of what's been happening and how things have been evolving. Just on a closing note, how do you see things going forward? What's sort of 2026 looking for you? You see this momentum continuing? Are you optimistic? Do you see the winds continuing to be favorable, or do you see any sort of issues or clouds or sort of potential roadblocks going forward?
Yeah, to wrap up briefly, I would say that 2026 will focus on again measurable impact, competitiveness, and innovation will be a turning point, especially for SMEs. And Euronext and Borsa Italiana will continue to play a leading role, and our mission remains clear: to support issuers through this transition.
That's fantastic. Sasha, all this good positive vibes. I mean, music must be music to your ears.
Yes, indeed. And Caterina, thank you very much. I think you are sort of pinpointing where the trajectory is leading us, and that's to something that is pretty much related to what is the value proposition for the companies and how they can make money on this. And I think with that, we can, thanks to you, Caterina, thanks for taking time and providing us with interesting insights. And James, as always, many thanks. And we'll be back next week. Stay tuned and please share this with friends, family, people you think they should listen. And we will be back next week. Many thanks, Caterina and James.
Yes, thanks again, Caterina. Yes, goodbye, everybody.
Bye. Bye-bye.